Let's welcome back Niall Stanage, White House columnist at The Hill. Niall, you and I have had this conversation about how if you want to beat President Trump, you're going to have to bring it to him. You can't stand in that ring and just fold your hands. What do we know about these Hawkeye State events?
Well, what we know is that Governor DeSantis is going to be in Iowa Tuesday and Wednesday. Former President Trump there on Thursday. Governor DeSantis holding fairly standard campaign type events. That's true in one instance for former President Trump, although he is also doing a televised town hall. Now, what we know beyond that is Iowa is always an absolutely vital state. Remember, former President Trump, when he was a candidate, was beaten there by Senator Ted Cruz back in 2016. But he's a long way up in the polls. There was a poll recently from Iowa putting Trump up by 42 points over Governor DeSantis. So that's a sizable margin for the Florida governor to try to make up.
No, when you're talking about a 42% margin, seriously, what do you do if you can't continue to play nice? The Florida governor last week, he finally responded to some of the president's jabs over the past several weeks, saying he's a different guy than the one who ran in 2016, that he's, quote, running to the left. Can we expect a response from Trump to those comments? Because Mr. Trump doesn't seem to hold back.
I'm sure we can always expect a response from Mr. Trump to any criticisms of him. He has made his political name by punching back with ever greater ferocity than anyone punches at him. But I do think that attack from Governor DeSantis was an interesting one, trying to position himself to Trump's right and suggest that on issues like criminal justice and even the culture wars, that the former president was insufficiently conservative. Now, to people in the middle ground or Democrats, they would kind of laugh at that idea, but it is an interesting point of attack by Governor DeSantis, positioning himself as the firmest, most aggressive conservative in this race.
And DeSantis also vowing to repeal a bipartisan criminal reform bill that Mr. Trump signed into law when he was still president. Will that tactic of publicly saying he'll undo some of the laws from the Trump White House endear him to undecided voters?
I'm not sure if it will endear him to undecided voters wary to make it to a general election. But in the Republican primary, it is certainly advantageous to be tough on crime. And the criminal justice bill that you're alluding to, Nick, is one that the former president apparently regrets signing. It was pushed very much by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. It was a bill that, frankly, was one of the few moments where former President Trump won some plaudits from people maybe on the centre left. It made it easier for people to have their sentences reduced, for example. But that's a risky enough position in a Republican primary. That's why Governor DeSantis is hitting the former president on it.
Now, I have one more question for you before I let you go. It's a story from NBC News. They talked about how scammers are using Mr. Trump's likeness and creating Trump bucks to bilk people out of thousands of dollars. The victims say they were led to believe the bogus money would have actual value once Mr. Trump took office again. And now it should be noted that there's no evidence that the former president or his campaign is in any way involved in this. Is this the first time you can recall such a scam involving a presidential candidate?
It is, and it's quite striking that it has had some effect, unfortunately, in defrauding or apparently defrauding people who believed that they were getting things that constituted legal tender. They were wrong about that. It's unfortunate that that happens. It's perhaps one of the most sort of nefarious examples we've seen of misinformation being used for financial gain rather than political gain, allegedly. And so it's a very grim development, really.
Now, before I let you go, what are you expecting out of Iowa this week?
Well, obviously, these two candidates going head-to-head is a big deal. This will be the biggest week of the campaign to date in Iowa. One of the key things to watch will be just how hard they punch at each other or whether they try to keep Republicans united by directing their fire at the Democrats and at President Biden.
Well, Niall, I know this is the season that you love because this is your bread and butter. Niall Stanage, thanks so much.
Thanks, Nick. Take care.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.